Welcome, everyone, to our special video on demand webinar, Understanding Your Federal Retirement Benefits, FERS, for Special Provisions Employees. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a returning member of our federal community, we're glad you're here. My name is Dan Sipe. I'm actually the founder of Serving Those Who Serve, and we are a federal benefits education and fiduciary financial planning group with a unique mission to reach, teach, and serve you, the career civilian Fed. I want to begin, as I always do, by saying thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today, but above all, thank you for your service to the government, to the country, to me, to everyone. You do not hear that enough, but you'll always hear it here. I know that you're watching this on your schedule, which is exactly why we created this format. We recognize that your work environment has changed over the last year especially, and finding time during your workday for professional development has become increasingly challenging. So we've made this valuable training available to you whenever and wherever works best, whether that's in the evening hours, weekend time, or just in segments to fit your day. So for today's training, as usual, we have the incomparable guru Ed Zerndorfer presenting. Ed is a retired career Fed himself, and probably has more certifications than anyone we've ever encountered. But he is also, hands down, the most published author currently writing on federal benefits. You have no doubt read his work in Fed Soup, federalnewsradio.com, My Federal Retirement, Federal News Network, and perhaps most importantly for us, in the Fed Zone, which you can find at fed-zone.com. Quite simply, in my opinion, no one knows these topics any better. Before we get started, I want to explain about the model for this training if you're new, because it's likely different from other trainings you've attended. So we don't just leave you hanging with a video to watch. So today is part one, which is general education delivered in this on-demand format. But we also have part two, which is personalized education delivered live via Zoom at a time that works for your schedule. Why? What we found over the years, the decades actually, is that people will attend multiple webinars, seminars, lunch and learns, briefings, watch videos, listen to podcasts, you name it, but still don't completely understand how each of the benefits will impact them and their families. So part two was created to make sure that you get your specific questions answered. And because it is personalized to you and your family's unique situation, we offer it by appointment only. So throughout today's training, you will see QR codes on the various slides. If at any point you want to schedule, simply use the camera on your cell phone to scan the QR code, and this will open a scheduling page where you can select a great date and time that works best for you. Now, if for some reason you're viewing this on your cell phone, and I can't imagine why, because you can do this anywhere and wherever you want, but if you are and can't access the camera feature at this moment, simply take a screenshot of any slide, open that in your Photos app, tap and hold the QR code, and that should open the scheduling page for you. Now, if you're not a QR code person, that's okay. You can email us directly at part2@sjbserve.com and request part two, and then we'll follow up with you to get you all set up. So here's how this on-demand session is going to work. Ed will present the comprehensive training content, and throughout the presentation, you'll see examples of questions that we typically address in our live sessions or in our part twos. While you won't be able to ask questions in real time as you could in the live webinar, you can always email your specific questions to part2@sjbserve.com, or better yet, schedule that part two session where we can address everything that's unique to your situation. Next, in keeping with our mission, in the interest of full disclosure, Raymond James asked us to provide the following slides, and we're happy to do so. I want to point out a couple of things that are important. Number one, Serving Those Who Serve sponsors this educational session to bring Ed to you. Number two, Ed is not here to solicit, never. And today will be purely educational. And lastly, we're not a part of OPM. I'll be back a little bit later to talk about the whole process, but any further ado, let me tell you a little bit about Ed. He's been helping federal employees have better understanding their benefits and make better retirement decisions for over 25 years. This marks a quarter of a century of Ed empowering Feds with benefits knowledge, and the team here at Serving Those Who Serve celebrates Ed's remarkable commitment to federal employee education. We are blessed to have him. Now, told you he's got some certifications. Boy, howdy does he. Here they come. He is a certified financial planner, a chartered life underwriter, a chartered financial consultant, a certified employee benefit specialist, an enrolled agent, and like every single one of our advisors at Serving Those Who Serve, he is a chartered federal employee benefits consultant. It is also a member of the Maryland Society of Accountants, the National Association of Enrolled Agents, the International Society of Certified Employee Benefit Specialists, Financial Planning Association, the National Association of Health Underwriters, and the Society of Financial Service Professionals. I told you he writes, man, does he ever. He writes every single week for us in the Fed Zone. You can find that at fed-zone.com, as well as for My Federal Retirement. And he is my featured go-to guest on our FedLife podcast. We've got those going up every month. We've been doing them for years. There's hundreds. Check them out on YouTube. So with that, let me turn it over to Ed. Take it away, sir.
Thanks very much, Dan. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this broadcast. Before I get started, I want to thank Dan and all the people at Serving Those Who Serve for once again giving me this opportunity to do, in this case, a broadcast. I couldn't do this live broadcast, as well as all the live webinars that we do. And we do on average about 7 to 9 webinars each month. I couldn't do any of these without the full support of Dan and the people at Serving Those Who Serve. I want to thank them. And again, I want to welcome you to this broadcast. I cannot emphasize more, as much as Dan said, how important it is that you attend these type of broadcasts or live webinars, because, ladies and gentlemen, we live in very challenging times. You know how challenging it's been over the past year to be a federal employee. Getting your questions answered about your benefits is very difficult. Your HR offices, your personnel offices are overwhelmed. They've been cut back. So we're here to help you every way possible. First with the broadcast, and then Dan will be talking about this part 2 process. So thank you. So again, thanks for joining us, and take advantage of everything we have to offer. Before we actually get started, I have some important websites up here on the screen. Bear with me 1 second. The first bullet there, opm.gov, is where you get all the information about the FERS retirement benefits. Now you say, well, the FERS retirement, why is there a special one for, why are we having a special one for special provision employees? Because they are slightly different, and we're going to point out the differences in terms of the calculation of your annuity, in terms of when you can retire, in terms of mandatory retirement. We're going to go through all that, and all this information that was obtained from the CSRS and FERS retirement manual. All the slides today, just about all of them, the information comes from that CSRS and FERS retirement manual. The next bullet, www.fed-zone.com. As Dan mentioned, I write a weekly column for Serving Those Who Serve. It's called the Fed Zone. I write 1 column a week, every week of the month, every month in the year, on average about 50 to 60 columns each year. On what topics? Employee benefits. I write columns on CSRS. I write columns on FERS. I write columns on Social Security. I've written many columns on the TSP. I've written columns on all the insurance benefits, including the federal employee health benefits and Medicare, dental and vision insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance. I've written columns on tax planning for retirement. I am an accountant. I have an accounting and tax practice, and taxes are very dear to my heart. So all the columns that I've written, especially now at this time of year, I'm writing, because it's tax season, or talks about in terms of how federal retirement benefits are taxed and what you need to know when you prepare your current year taxes. I also write columns on survivor benefits and estate planning. You name it, I've been writing about it. I've been writing these columns ever since April 2019, almost 7 years. And every column I've written in the Fed Zone has an archive. If you have a particular subject you'd like to read about, like special provision employees, FERS, TSP, FERS, anything, special provision employees, anything, Social Security, all you have to do is go to www.fed-zone.com, and under the search engine, put your favorite topic, and every column I've written over the past almost 7 years will pop up. I want to emphasize the fact that the way I write these columns on the Fed Zone is so that you understand them. Nothing high powered, down to good information. A lot of your questions about your employee benefits, and I'm sure you have plenty of questions, can be answered just by reading my columns. And yes, I've written several columns on special provision employees in terms of the FERS benefits, in terms of TSP, in terms of Social Security, you name it. I've written in the Fed Zone. So if you go to the search engine there on www.FERS with special provision, you'll see every column I've written. The next bullet, www.stwsurb.com, has Dan, among the things on that website, you signed up for this particular, you got a hold of this broadcast, our live webinars. You can sign up. They're free. You can attend as many times as you want. It's all on the website there when they are. You can sign up as many times as you want. And if this is your first webinar you have attended, as you have the opportunity to sign up for this Part 2 process. Dan will talk about that a little bit later. What this Part 2 process is, it's a follow-up in which a serving notice representative will sit down with you and analyze your benefits at no cost. He'll talk more about that a little bit later. Also on the website, Serving Those Who Serve, are blogs. Other serving notice representatives write blogs on the website there about employee benefits, well written. You can learn a tremendous amount by reading those blogs. And also on the website, there are podcasts. Dan mentioned that he and I do a monthly podcast, and in which for about an hour, hour and a half each month, we review my recent Fed Zone columns back and forth. We talk about what's in the column. He asks me questions. You can learn a lot by listening to those podcasts. And there are other podcasts conducted by Dan and other serving representatives. Tremendous amount of knowledge. You can learn a tremendous amount just by listening to podcasts. Over 100 podcasts out there. Ladies and gentlemen, the Serving Those Who Serve is an organization that wants to help federal employees and retirees get through this whole challenging process of getting to retirement, surviving in retirement. We're here to help you. We are not here to sell. We are here to educate and answer your questions. So please take advantage of it. And with that, let's go ahead and get started and talk about special provision employees under FERS. I need to point out that on the slide here, I said under FERS. Why do I say under FERS? Because there is another retirement system out there, the old system that I was part of. I was part of the civil service retirement system. Those employees who were under CSRS were hired sometime before January 1st, 1984. If anybody came into the federal government, their initial hire to federal service hired as a permanent employee, full-time or part-time. After December 31st, 1983, they were put under FERS. Now, I'm saying this because if you are a special provision employee, and you're listening today, I highly doubt that you're under the old system. I say that because, as you well know, there is mandatory retirement for law enforcement officers, for federal firefighters, for traffic controllers. There's for Customs and Border Patrol officers, mandatory retirement. And that mandatory retirement is usually around 55, 56, 57. There really wouldn't be anybody out there now working as a special provision employee who was under the old system. So everybody is under FERS. And that's why this webinar is entitled Special Provision Employees Under FERS. All right. So you were hired sometime after December 31st, 1983 as a special provision employee. You were hired either as a law enforcement officer, LEO for short, a firefighter, air traffic controller, or a Customs and Border Patrol officer. Now, let's get into a little more detail as far as your job classification. How is a law enforcement officer, how is their job classified? Let's see what it says here on the screen. A law enforcement officer is an employee who occupies a, quote, rigorous position whose primary duties are the investigation, apprehension, or determination of individuals suspected or convicted of offenses against the criminal laws of the United States, or the protection officials of the United States against threats to personal safety. Now notice when I have the word rigorous, I have an asterisk. Let's read what the asterisk says. Rigorous. The duties of the job are such that employment opportunities should be limited through the establishment of a maximum entry age and physical qualifications. And I'm going to add something to that, a mandatory retirement. You have reached a certain age in which you can no longer be a law enforcement officer because you got to the age now you don't have the physical capabilities that you had when you were younger. Let's face it, as we get older, our the opportunities to do more rigorous duties are diminishing. So there's a maximum entry age, and there's a maximum and a mandatory retirement age for someone who is a Leo. Ditto for a firefighter. A firefighter's employee who occupies a rigorous position whose primary duties are to perform work directly connected with extinguishing fires with the control and the extinguishing of fires. Rigorous. A firefighter position is open to young and physically vigorous individuals whose primary duties are to perform work directly connected with controlling and extinguishing fires. Air traffic control. We've heard a lot about these in the news in recent years. Who is an air traffic controller? An air traffic controller is a civilian employee of the Department of Transportation or the Department of Defense working in an air traffic control facility or flight service station, and who is actively engaged in the separation and control of air traffic, or providing pre-flight, in-flight, or airport advisory service to aircraft operators. Also included in this definition is an employee who is in the immediate first level supervisor of an air traffic controller as defined in the first sentence in the paragraph. All right. And finally, Customs and Border Patrol Officer, CBPO. Someone who interviews persons, examines documents to determine citizenship and immigration status. Someone makes informed decisions regarding the admissibility of aliens into the United States and admitting, holding, or releasing merchandise. 3. Someone who obtains information about the description, characteristics, value, and country of origin of imported merchandise or agriculture products by questioning and eliciting information from people. 4. Searches persons, baggage, cargo, and carriers for contraband. Monitor, examine, and process cargo containers at seaports to facilitate importing merchandise. And 6. Exercise the sound judgment necessary to apprehend, detain, or arrest persons at the point of entry who are violating federal immigration, customs, agriculture, or other laws. That is a Customs and Border Patrol officer. All right. Now, whenever I would conduct a live seminar, and this goes back to pre-COVID, I started doing these live seminars in 1999, almost 27 years ago. And before I would start the seminar, I would ask the participants, let's say I was going to do a CSRS seminar, or also included in CSRS is something called FERS offset. And I would start off the seminar and say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to talk about CSRS and FERS offset. Okay? Are you sure you're attending the right seminar? And people are looking at me, of course, what are you asking us for? Of course we are. Well, how do you know? How do you know? Because there is another retirement system out there known as FERS, the Federal Employee Retirement System. Well, they would say, of course we're sure. And I would ask the question, well, how do you know officially that you are? And some people would scratch. I'd do the same thing if I was conducting a FERS seminar. Are you certain you're covered by the right retirement system? Of course we are. That's why we're here. Well, how do you know for sure? So a few people would shake their head and say, yes, I saw something on my leave and earnings statement. You know that leave and earnings statement, LES, that you get every 2 weeks? There's something on there that says what retirement system you're covered by. If you look at an LES, you'll see a line that says retirement -FER, and there'll be a number, a dollar amount, $25.30, $32, We're going to run an example here in a few moments. But what I want to say now is that your leave and earnings statement is an indication that you are covered by FERS as opposed to or CSRS. But your leave and earnings statement is not official. Not official. What document do you have that tells you officially that you're covered by FERS? Answer, your standard Form 50, SF50. Everybody has a standard Form 50, correct? And OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, has coded your SF50 according to what retirement system you're in. Now, as you know, there are many boxes on your SF50. Many boxes. The box we're going to be looking at now is box number 30. On the screen here, I show the codes. There are all a bunch of them for FERS employees. Now you say, well, why do you have 3 sets? And now we're going to get into why. We're going to talk about why we had the 3 sets of codes for FERS employees. To answer this question, let's go back to this answer I got from many live seminar participants. It says so on my leave and earnings statement. What shows up in your leave and statement? Yeah, there's something that says FERS retirement. All right. So the best way to do this is let's do an example. Let's suppose you're earning, let's say, $100,000 a year. $100,000 a year. Let's take an even number. Yeah, hey, you're not taking home $100,000 a year. I want you to think about all the good stuff that's coming out of your paycheck, and it shows up on your leave and earnings statement. What is coming out of your paycheck? You say, well, I got those federal taxes, I got state taxes, I have my TSP contributions are coming out of my paycheck. It shows up in my leave and earnings statement. Yeah, and I have the government health insurance. Those premiums are coming out. I have dental vision insurance, where I have life insurance. They're coming out of my paycheck. I give money to the combined federal campaign. All right. So I just went through a few of them. Now, what you see on the screen here is what we call mandatory contributions. Mandatory deductions. What do I mean by mandatory? You have no say in the matter. When it comes to your federal income taxes being deducted from your paycheck, do you have a say? Do you have a say in that? Can you tell your payroll processing office how much to take out in federal taxes? Sure. Sure you can. You fill out that famous W-4, right? It's the same thing with state. And you choose every year what your health insurance plan is. That'll determine the premiums that are coming out. So you make those decisions. You change your decision. You can make each year, maybe every couple of months, you can change how much you're putting into the TSP. Which TSP? Traditional raw TSP? Yeah. But what you see on the screen here is mandatory. You have no say in the matter. It's going to come out whether you like it or not. And let's read what it says here. Let's look at the 3 mandatory deductions from your paycheck. Come out every 2 weeks. The first bullet says that 1.3% of whatever your gross wages are that pay period is being deducted and deposited in what's called the FERS Retirement and Disability Fund. Now, what is that? There are 3 components to the FERS retirement. When you retire from federal service, you will eventually, and we'll talk about what eventually means, you will eventually receive 3 types of retirement income. The first type of retirement income, and this is what you'll get immediately means you retire, and then 1 to 2 months after that you retire, you get your first of lifetime FERS annuity checks. That's the first component of the special provision retirement, special provision employee retirement under FERS, the FERS annuity. What is the FERS annuity? The FERS annuity is what I call a guaranteed pension. Just like what I'm receiving the CSRS annuity. I'm receiving a CSRS annuity. I retired from federal service 20 years ago. I've been receiving this annuity check ever since, every month. And every year I get cost of living adjustments, just about. In a few years, there was no cost of living adjustment. And as long as I'm living, I'm going to get this check. It's guaranteed. Who's guaranteeing it? The federal government. The federal government. And you get cost of living adjustments that has some inflation protection. Now, we should count our blessings. I know I do. Because this guaranteed pension is classified as a defined benefit plan. That is exactly what a guaranteed pension is. You know what you're going to get. It's defined. And you get it as long as you're living. And when you retire, you can make a decision whether you want to give a survivor annuity to one person. Who's that one person? Well, that one person that you can give a survivor annuity to, and they would receive as much as 50% of what you were receiving at the time of your death for the rest of his or her life, that person has to have what's called an insurable interest in you. Who has an insurable interest in you? Generally defined as a relative closer than a first cousin, which would include a spouse. It could include a child, a son or a daughter. It can include a sibling, brother or sister. It could include a parent. The most logical person to get a survivor annuity is a spouse. A spouse. And that's what most married employees choose to give their spouse a survivor annuity. You have to pay for it. There'll be a reduction in your annuity, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. We actually have a special live webinar on survivor benefits, and if you're interested, please, and I really encourage you to attend that one, because it talks about survivor benefits in general, not only for spouses, but for other members of the family. All right. So what's the cost? Now, let me get back. Let me just say one thing more about the guaranteed pension. It's extremely rare that a private company offers a guaranteed pension. Why? Because they're expensive. They are expensive. If a private company is going to offer any type of a retirement plan, and they don't have to, but if they do, it's going to be in the form of not a defined benefit plan, but something called a defined contribution plan. What's the example of a defined contribution plan? 401k plan? 403b plan? The TSP. Yeah, you're putting money into the TSP. The biggest difference between the FERS annuity and the TSP? TSP, you're not guaranteed anything. You're going to get as much out of your TSP. You're going to get as much out of your TSP according to what? How much you contribute all these years that you're working as a federal employee. How well you invest in it. You're getting also partial government matching from your agency when it comes to the TSP. But there's no guarantee. To understand more about the TSP, I encourage you to attend or listen to, because we do have a live TSP webinar every month. We have, though, a recording for TSP for special provision employees. So when you get a chance, you should listen to it because it's very important. There are some important differences in as far as the TSP is concerned when it comes to special provision employees. So please check that out. All right, let's get back to the FERS annuity. So as great as it is, you have to pay for it. And what is the cost? What is the cost? Every 2 weeks, if you are a FERS employee, 1.3% of your wages for that pay period. Let's say your wages for that pay period, the gross wages is $4,000. $4,000. So what is $4,000? What is 1.3% of $4,000? 1.3% of $4,000 is $42. And if you look when you leave an earnings statement, go down there, it'll say retirement -FERS, $42, or FERS retirement, $42. That is your contribution. Now, keep in mind that, and you'll see this later on, what you will eventually be receiving when you retire as a special provision employee in terms of the amount of that FERS annuity, a lifetime annuity. What you're paying for it is so relatively small. Who is paying for most of that retirement? Your agency. You're contributing for a 1.3%, and your agency is putting in on your behalf the other approximately 12%. Is going in 12% of what? Your wages. They're coming from their budgets. And then the actuaries have to get to work to make sure that there's enough earnings in the retirement fund so that when you retire, you're going to get a lifetime annuity. All right. So that's the first mandatory withholding from your paycheck. Next bullet is 1.45% of your wages goes to Medicare Part A. Anybody working today, this has been true since 1965, when Medicare started, has to pay what's called the hospital insurance tax, HIT. So you're paying 1.45% of your wages. That's matched by your agency, and there's no upper wage limit. Now, why is this important? It's important because when you turn age 65, you're eligible to enroll in Medicare. That's the age you can enroll in Medicare. And you're encouraged to do so. Why? That's another subject, another live webinar. We hold that every month. The relationship between FEHB and Medicare. Please check that out. We have that live. That's a live webinar every month. The relationship between Medicare and FEHB and TRICARE if you're a military retiree. Now, getting back to Medicare Part A, here's the law. If you've been paying this 1.45% hospital insurance tax, it's a payroll tax, for a minimum 10 years, any 10 years during your working lifetime, any 10 years. You started working maybe when you were a teenager, worked in high school. Then you went to college, you did some working. Maybe you went into the military. You were paying, when you were getting paid, you were paying that payroll tax. Then you got your first job, maybe a second job. If between that time you first started working at age 65, you have been paying that payroll tax for 10 years, any 10 years, that means that when you enroll in Medicare Part A, which is the hospital insurance tax, which is the hospital insurance, you pay no premium. It's free. The other parts of Medicare, though, are not free. Medicare Part B, medical insurance, Medicare Advantage, and Medicare Part D, the prescription drug program, are not free. We're not going to talk about that today. But again, this Medicare Part A hospital insurance tax is mandatory. You may have been working there for 30 years. Makes no difference. They're going to still take it out because it just takes 10 years to have it Medicare free. I'm 75 years old. I'm still working. I'm on Medicare Part A, and I got to pay the Medicare payroll tax. All right. So that's the second bullet. Now comes the third bullet. 6.2% of your wages is being deducted. It's called the FICA tax. What is that? It is, the FICA tax is for Social Security, the Social Security. FERS employees are covered by Social Security. So every year you're paying the 6.2% FICA tax is deducted from your paycheck up to what's called the maximum wage base, which this year is $184,500. What does that mean? If during 2026, the amount of your wages, called Social Security wages, goes over $184,500, at that point, they stop taking out the FICA tax until next January, when what's called the maximum wage base when it goes up. Last year in 2025, the maximum wage base was $176,100. Right. So when can you get Social Security? The earliest you can get Social Security is when you're age 62. You take it at 62, it's going to be reduced. When can you get full Social Security? At your full retirement age, which for probably most of you is going to be age 67. You can wait till 70 and you'll get more Social Security. We're not going to talk about that today. That's also a separate webinar. We have that webinar every few months. Please go to the website to sign up. It really pays to learn everything you need to know about Social Security. All right. So those are mandatory withholdings. Now, I'm going to make a statement, and I'm sure anybody listening would agree with me. Over the years, federal employees, all federal employees, have had to pay more for their benefits. Putting a little more money into the TSP. Yeah. But hopefully putting more money in as they allow you to put more money in. Yeah. How about your health insurance premiums? Have they gone up a little bit? Yeah. Life insurance premiums? A little bit. Yeah. Long-term care insurance? Yeah. What about dental vision? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. I want to just point out that in the year 2012, Congress made some big changes to the FERS retirement. I want to show you on the next screen what happened. Congress created a subset of FERS called FERS Revised Annuity Employees. FERS RA, R-A, Revised Annuity Employees. And what change did they make? Look at the first bullet. Congress said that a FERS RA employee will have deducted from his or her paycheck every pay period. Not 1.3%, but 3.6%. That's another what? 2.3% out of the employee's paycheck. And the agency contribution, which I said was about 12%, it was reduced down to by 2.3%, down to 9 point something. What's happening here? More of the cost of the FERS retirement is being shifted to who? The employee. The employee still has to make their contributions to the TSP. The same amounts being taken out for Medicare Part A and Social Security. More of the cost is being shifted to the employee. Now, I got some good news, though. Here's the good news. When Congress created this subset of FERS RA, they grandfather it. What do I mean a grandfather? What I mean by that is that if you were on board as of January 1st, 2013, remember Congress did this in 2012 and they said, anybody being hired into federal service, FERS employees, after December 31st, 2012, will be considered to be a FERS RA employee. If you were on board as of January 1st, 2013, you stay in FERS. You're not affected by this. But then, lo and behold, Congress in 2013 did it again. I don't know what happened during 2012 and 2013. Congress was on a rampage. They created another subset of FERS. This is called FERS FRAE. I'm not making this up. FRAE, F-R-A-E, stands for Further Revised Annuity Employees. And then what happened here? A FERS FRAE employee, how much do they pay into the FERS Retirement Disability Fund every 2 weeks? Not 3.6%, but there, 4.9%, another 1.3% out of the employee's paycheck. And the agency, they contribute 1.3% less. Again, more of the cost being shifted to the employee. Congress saying grandfathering. It said that if you were on board, if you were hired before January 1st, 2013, you stay in FERS. If you were hired during 2013, you stay in FERS RA. But if you were hired anytime after December 31st, 2013, you're going to be a FERS FRAE employee, paying that extra 1.3%. Now, when Congress did all this, that's fine. But here's the problem. There was confusion. OPM got the word. You have to train. You have to train personnel offices, human resources office about this. Who's FERS? Who stays in FERS? Who's going to be FERS free? Who's going to be FERS free? And now we'll go back to the screen here. This is your first assignment. This is your first assignment. I want you to pull out your most recent SF50 and check the codes I'm going to mention to you, depending on your job classification and when you were hired. Let's start off here on the top. If you were hired as a Leo or a firefighter, and you were hired before, this is your initial hire into federal service as a full-time, even a part-time employee, and it happened before January 1st, 2013. If you're a Leo or a firefighter, you should have the letter M. It'll probably say FICA because you're paying Social Security tax, M and FICA. If you're an air traffic controller hired before January 1st, 2013, you should have the letter L and FICA. Customs and Border Patrol officer, you should have the letter O. The letter O and FICA in box number 13, in box 30. Check that code. If you were hired during the year 2013, your initial hire, you're a Leo, a firefighter, you should have the letters MR and then MR and FICA. Air traffic controller hired sometime during the year 2013, LR. Customs and Border Patrol officer hired anytime during the year 2013, you should have the letters OR and FICA. And finally, if you were hired anytime after December 31st, 2013, you're a Leo or firefighter, MF. Air traffic controller hired anytime after December 31st, 2013, LF. And finally, if you're a Customs and Border officer hired anytime after December 31st, 2013, OF. Ladies and gentlemen, please check those codes, because if you have the wrong code, it's going to mess up your future retirement. I'm going to share with you an absolutely true story about this. What happened to an employee? And the story goes like this. It was back in 2018. I was doing a live 2-day seminar at the Department of the Interior in downtown Washington. This was a live seminar. 2 days. And everything I just told you, I told them, except they were not special provision employees, but it still applied. They had the same code. Their codes are K. Everything's K because they're not special provision employees. They have K, KR, KF. So during lunchtime of the first day, a gentleman comes up to me and says, I hear what you said, but I have a feeling that my payroll office is taking too much money out of my paycheck. I said, well, give me a little background information. He said, yeah, well, here's my situation. I was hired. This was my initial hire into federal service back in 1991. I just graduated from college. I got a job at the Pentagon as a civilian employee. I got hired as a GS7. And through the years, I moved up. But then in 2015, I applied for and got a promotion here at the Department of Interior. I got to a GS15. I've been here ever since. And that's why I'm attending the seminar, because I'm eligible to retire in 2 years. I want to get the information. I said, okay. So I said to him, so what is your concern? I said, I think they're just taking too much money out of my paycheck. So I said, I'll tell you what, here's what I want you to do. You're coming back tomorrow. I said, absolutely. I want you to bring with you, when you come back to the seminar tomorrow, the following. I want you to bring your most recent SF50. Your most recent SF50 statement. Okay? And also, I want you to bring your most recent Believe in Earnings statement. and we'll meet again tomorrow during lunchtime. So he said, I'll do that. So next day he came back. So he comes up to me during lunchtime. He said, are you ready? I said, yeah. He said, what do you need first? I said, give me your leave and earnings statement. And I want you to cover up everything on that leave and earnings statement, except your gross wages. Hold on to the SF-50. All right? He said, all right. So he gives me his leave and earnings, he gives me the leave and earnings statement. It shows his gross wages. I'm going to make up a number. It was $5,000. $5,000. I want to make it even. Well, back in those days, it's still true that FERS employees, FERS Fray employees, those hired after December 31st, 2013, their amount of contribution to the FERS Retirement Disability Fund is 4.4%. 4.4%. So what I did was I took 4.4% and multiplied it times $5,000, the amount of his gross wages, and that comes out to me 4.4% of $5,000 is $2,000. I'm sorry, it's $220. $220. 4.4% of $5,000 is $220. I said, now, please open up your leave and earnings statement and go to that line that says FERS Retirement or Retirement FERS. I bet you it says $220. He opens up and says, yeah, you're right. Then I said to him, now, I want you to open up your SF-50, box number 30, go to box 30, and I bet you it says KF, K because he's not a special, he's a non-special employee, KF. He says, you're right. He said, what happened? I said, sir, when you came to the Interior Department, your personnel office, your HR office, considered you to be a new employee. This is 2015. Yeah, this is after December 31st, 2013. You're not a new employee to government. You've been working for the government ever since 1991. You started as a FERS employee, and you continue to be a FERS employee. You were not rehired. You should have stayed in K. Your HR office was not trained to take into consideration that you were actually in this government. They should have kept you in K again. So they put you in K, they put you in the FERS Fray. Result is they withheld from your paycheck for the last 3 years since you've been here. He said, how much do they overheld? Well, I said, well, I mean, how much have you earned over the past 3+ years? He said, in round numbers, about $500,000. I said, $500,000? All right, I'll tell you how much they overwithheld. The difference between K, the percentage, which is 0.8%, and KF, which was 4.4%, is 3.6%. What is 3.6% of $500,000? $18,000. They overwithheld from your paycheck $18,000. That's not loose change, ladies and gentlemen. He said, what do I do? I said, you're going to go to your human resources office and you tell them that they need to fix this. They have to call OPM to find out what to do in terms of changing it. They have to change it to K, from KF to K. And then they have to contact your payroll office and send you the $18,000 that they withheld. This is not an isolated story, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen it both ways, where an employee was hired after 2013 and their payroll and their office put them into regular FERS. You know what's going to happen? When that employee wants to retire, they're eligible to retire. They're going to get a letter from OPM. Oh, yeah, you're eligible to retire, but you owe us money because they didn't take out enough money. You have to pay us that money, probably with interest, in order for you to get your retirement annuity. It works both ways. So please, this is your first assignment. you need to check your most recent SF50 box 30. Make sure you got the right code. And if you got the wrong code, you need to contact your human resources office immediately to get it fixed. All right. Okay. Just want to mention very briefly here about how much you can contribute to the TSP. FERS employees, in addition to their own contributions, get an automatic 1% of gross pay contribution, an additional 4% matching contributions to their contributions if they can. But in order to get that maximum 4% matching contribution, the 1% is automatic, whether you contribute or not. You get 1% of your current year SF50 salary. And the additional 4% matching is in addition to what you're putting in. But in order to get the 4% maximum match, you must contribute at least 5% each pay date. How much can you contribute this year? Well, if you are, no matter what your age is, you can put in a maximum $24,500. If you're going to be over age 50, you're between 50 and 59, or if you're going to be over age 64, I can't imagine. Well, if you are over age 60, if you're over age 60, I should say over age 63, you're probably still not a special provision employee. You might be working in a different federal position, and you still can contribute to the TSP. You can put a maximum, make $8,000 catch-up contribution. For that's a total of $32,500. Now, if you happen to be 60, 61, 62, or 63 during this year, there's something called the super catch-up, which is $11,250. That's only for employees who are going to be 60, 61, 62, or 63 during this year. If you were born between January 1st, 1966 and December 31st, 1969, you can make that super catch-up of $11,250 together with the $24,500 makes a total of $35,750. That money can go to the traditional TSP, to the raw TSP, a combination of both. Please, to get more information about the TSP, I encourage you to attend this special recording, Special Provision Employees TSP, which will be available shortly. All right. Okay. So now let's move on to another box on your SF50. Another box on your SF50. Very important box. Go to box 31. Box 31 says service computation date, SCD for short. Below that will be the word leave, Leave. And then there's going to be a date, year, month, day. Now, what is this service computation date, leave, and what is this date all about? All right, we're talking about your annual leave, by the way. As you know, when you came into federal service, assuming you are a full-time employee, during the first 3 years of your federal service, you accrue 4 hours of annual leave every 2 weeks. When you get to year 4, through the end of year 4, you get 6 hours annual leave accrual every 2 weeks. I think the last paper you get 10 hours. And finally, when you get to 15 years of service, how many hours of annual leave do you accrue every 2 weeks? 8 hours. So what is this date in box 31? Is it your hire date? Maybe. It could be. Let's do an example. Suppose we have someone who was hired 20 years ago, I'm going to make up a date, on February the 24th, 2006. That was their hire date. They were hired on February the 24th, 2006. Let's say as a special provision employee, Leo, firefighter, whatever. That's when they were hired. Would that be their SCD for leave? Yeah, makes sense. Is there any way, by the way, that SCD for leave can be backdated? Well, I'll give you a couple possibilities. One possibility is if that employee had served in the military, active duty time. Let's say that same employee had served before being hired on February 24th, 2006 as a special provision employee, had 3 years of active duty. In that case, their SCD for leave should have been automatically, I repeat, automatically, no deposit required, backdated to February the 24th, 2003. No deposit. Another way that SCD for leave can be backdated, if you had some temporary time, maybe in high school, maybe in college, you worked for the government. Maybe you worked for a summer agency, over the summer at a federal agency, or maybe you were in the Peace Corps. Maybe you worked at the post office during December when the post office was really busy during the holiday season. You worked a couple months. That's temporary time. You have no benefits when it comes to being a temporary employee. The only thing you get, the only benefit you really have when you're a temporary employee is that you accrue leave, sick leave and annual leave. All right. So that employee had a year's worth of temporary time in addition to 3 years of term. Now their SCD for leave goes back to February the 24th, 2002. And they're going to go right into the 6-hour leave category. All right. So the SCD for leave is pretty cut and dry. But now we're going to talk about the SCD for retirement, which is crucial, absolutely crucial for your retirement. To understand why the SCD for retirement is crucial, let's go back to this slide. Oops, we load here. Maybe I missed a slide. All right. The SCD for retirement is crucial. The SCD for retirement is crucial in the following way. Eligibility to retire, computation, years of service. When you work for the federal government, you are accumulating years of service. And those accumulating years of service are being used for 2 things. Eligibility for what? To retire. In order to retire from federal service, no matter what type of occupation you're in order to retire from federal service, no matter whether you're a special provision employee, you're a scientist, you're an engineer, whatever you are, whatever your job occupation is, if you want to retire from federal service under what's called an immediate retirement, what does that mean? You met the eligibility rules, or in terms of minimum years of service and minimum age. So let's take special provision employees, and you'll see this later on. I have a chart. If you are a special provision employee and you have accumulated a minimum 25 years of service as a special provision employee, 25 years of service, you could retire at any age. If you are a special provision employee and you have accumulated at least 20 years of service, but fewer than 25 years of service, then you can retire anytime after age 50 and get your first of lifetime annuity checks thereafter. Now, how do you get credit? How do you get credit for years of service? Every 2 weeks, when you are having withheld from your paycheck the 1.3% or the 3.6% or the 4.9%. Remember back to slides we showed, but what's coming out of your paycheck? Remember that the first bullet? Every 2 weeks, that amount's being deducted from your paycheck and deposited into the FERS Retirement Disability Fund. It's making you 2 weeks closer to being eligible to retire. So your years of service are determined by your contribution to the FERS retirement every 2 weeks. Computation is the other thing. That your years of service, when you were working, are being used for what? Your FERS annuity. Later on, we're going to talk about the computation of the FERS annuity. Remember I mentioned earlier the 3 components of the FERS retirement? The bottom line is, the longer you work, the more you are contributing to the FERS Retirement Disability Fund, and the larger your high 3 average salary, the larger will be your starting FERS annuity. We're going to show you how the FERS annuity is computed. But I will tell you, the more years you work, the larger will be your starting FERS gross annuity. And I emphasize the word starting because you're going to get cost of living adjustments. Before you decide to retire, There is mandatory for retirement under special provisions. You'll see this later on in terms of the chart when you have to retire, mandatory retirement. But that doesn't mean you have to stop working for the government. You can continue working, and in you so doing, you'll accumulate more years. You'll get you'll end up getting a higher favorite salary, and that will result in your getting a larger starting FERS gross annuity. So how are you earning accumulating those years of service? Every 2 weeks, when that 1.3% or that 3.6% or that 4.9% being deducted from your paycheck is making you 2 weeks richer as far as your starting gross annuity is. So what is the retirement SCD? What is this retirement SCD? It is defined as the year, month, day that you made your first contribution to the FERS Retirement Disability Fund. Now, when we were using a few moments ago, we were talking about this employee was hired on February 24th, 2006. That was their hire date. Would that be their SCD for retirement? Yeah. Makes sense, because that was the first pay period they contributed 1.3% of their paycheck into the FERS Disability Fund. That was their hire date as a special provision employee. But wait a minute, didn't we say that their SCD for leave was pushed back 4 years to February 24th, 2002? Yeah. Why was their SCD for retirement pushed back to February 24th, 2002? The reason is that when that employee was in the military, they were not contributing to FERS. When they were a temporary employee, they were not contributing to FERS. But that employee can make a deposit for their military service, which we're going to be talking about next. They can make a deposit for their temporary time. And in so doing, their SCD for retirement and their SCD for leave and for retirement will be one of the same, but they got to make a deposit, and we'll talk about that next. All right, your next assignment is you have to really find out what your SCD for retirement is. Crucial. The SCD for retirement is crucial for 2 reasons. First of all, it's a basis for when you're first eligible to retire. You'll see this when we go to the chart. What is the minimum number of years you have to work to be eligible to retire? And the second reason is it gives you an idea what your starting FERS gross annuity is based on your years of service and the other factors you got into your high average salary. How do you find out your SCD retirement? Well, you can check with your personnel or HR office. They're busy. They may not be around. So the other thing you may want to do is go to OPM directly and ask them. You can send an email to OPM's retirement office at this email address, retired@opm, requesting what you want to know what your SCD for retirement is. This is especially important if, in fact, you have made a deposit for your military service. I've seen this too often. Someone has made a deposit for their military service, and they got a receipt that they paid in full their military service, but then it didn't show up as official. It's not official that their SCD for retirement has been pushed back to reflect that deposit. So please, and when you OPM, be patient when it comes to asking OPM. They're backed up with questions. You may take them for once, but it's well worth doing. Okay, before we get into get into the military deposits, I'd like to take a little break here and take some questions. So Dan, let's see if we can have everyone look at the questions.
Hi, folks. What you see on your screen, these are exactly examples of some of the questions that we address in those Part 2 personalized education sessions. So remember, you can scan the QR code on any slide to schedule that Part 2, or email us at part2@swserve.com. We are standing by to serve you, so you can do that. Now, I'd like to tell you a bit more about the Part 2 process that we've mentioned a couple of times now. So first, a little bit of history. Part 2 came about as a result of our observation over the decades here at Serving to Serve is that people come into trainings, briefings, videos like this with questions like, what is it and how does it work? Then the information starts flowing. And then those questions frequently morph into, ooh, what's mine going to look like? And how's that going to impact me and my family? And that is exactly why we created part two. So part two, again, is what we call personalized education. And the focus is absolutely on education. It consists of 2 complimentary, no obligation meetings with the advisors from Serving Those Who Serve to review your benefits. So today we're learning about FERS for Special Provisions employees, but we believe no retirement decision exists in a vacuum. All of these parts can influence your retirement. So we are going to discuss everything. And to do so, we're going to create a comprehensive report for you covering all of your retirement benefits. So the first meeting is data gathering. We're going to ask you to bring some information. Then at that second meeting, we're going to review with you in detail that benefits report. So obviously, we do some pension projections, but we also talk about Social Security, TSP, FEDLife, your health insurance, Medicare, survivor benefits, all included within the report. What I like to do here, though, is a little compare and contrast between the reports that you might be used to from your HR. First off, those HR reports are fantastic, incredibly accurate, but I do have one beef with them across every single agency. They only show the first year of retirement. You're going to be retired longer than 1 year. So, by contrast, our report is going to go much further, all the way out to your age 90, but also give you multiple scenarios for different retirement dates as we're projecting out over the longer term what yours might look like. In addition, with regards to Social Security, some of those HR reports will include an estimate or give you a summary. And yes, you can always go to ssa.gov to track down some more information. But our report is going to bring Social Security and the pension together and also show you over the long term what future cost of living adjustments might look like for you. And that is really important. So to sum it all up, yes, we'll cover the FERS retirement, but also survivor benefits, FEDLife, health insurance, TSP. Folks always have tons of questions about TSP, especially this year with 2 major changes, in-plan Roth conversions and the possibility that your catch-up contributions might go into Roth. So we talk a lot about TSP, traditional TSP, Roth conversions. What's the best way to get money out of TSP? Those are all things we can talk about in those meetings. And again, there's no obligation. So Ed and I encourage people to take advantage of this. We've never met anyone that didn't learn something from a part 2. And best of all, as I mentioned, meetings are held over Zoom, so you don't even need to go anywhere. You can schedule them at times that work with your calendar. Okay. So to schedule a part 2 session, again, simply scan the QR code or email us at part2@swserve.com, and then we'll send you a calendar link and you can choose a great date and time that works for you. And now, Ed, I will turn it back over to you, sir. Take us into the good stuff.
Thanks very much, Dan. Great information. Ladies and gentlemen, we really encourage this part 2 process. We're certain you have questions. We're here to help answer those questions, so please take advantage of it. And we thank you, Dan, for that. Okay, so as promised, I want to talk about military deposits for active duty military service and deposits for temporary time. Let's keep in mind, in both cases, when you were on active duty in the military, you were not contributing to any retirement system, CS, RUS, FERS. The same thing when you were a temporary employee. As a temporary employee of the federal government, you get paid, taxes are being taken out of your paycheck. The only benefit you have, you're accruing annual leave and sick leave. You can't even put money into the TSP. Well, now, when you're hired as a permanent employee, you had this opportunity to make a deposit for the time that you were on active duty or time you were in temporary service. Let's talk about military deposits first. And let's read what it says here on the screen. Honorable active duty time may be credible for establishing retirement eligibility and computing your annuity. Remember those 2 words, eligibility and computation. So you can get credit for the time that you were on active duty for both eligible to add to your years of service for making you eligible to retire, and it'll add years in the computation annuity, okay? Under the following condition: if the service time was not included, that active duty military service not included in military retirement pay. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you are a military retiree for active duty, to serve the minimum 20 years active duty, 20, 25, 30 or more years and then you retire from the military and active duty, in order to get credit for all those active duty years for your FERS civilian annuity, you would have to waive the military retirement paycheck. You have to waive that check and then make a deposit. You'll see how much that could cost. A lot of money. Now, should you do that? I cannot answer that question. But I know somebody who can. It's not for everybody. You got to run the numbers. So if you happen to be interested in, if you're a military retiree, of making that deposit, please set up a Part 2 meeting. This is where the Part 2 meeting comes in, because the representatives that serving those are well familiar with the computation process, and most importantly, can help you make that decision, whether it's really worth waiving that military retirement paycheck. Okay? Now, if you happen to be a reservist, it's different. Reservist is different, because when you're a reservist, you serve the minimum 20 years in the reserves, some of which were active duty, some were inactive duty, and then you won't get your reserve retirement pay until you're age 60. Can you make a deposit for your reserve retirement pay? And the answer is yes, you can, to which you buy back only your active duty years. But most importantly, when you buy back your reserve retirement pay, you're buying back those active duty years. It will take nothing away from your the amount of your reserve retirement pay. It will add to your FERS annuity, but it will not take anything away from your FERS retirement. It's been my experience over the years that reservists are getting wrong information from their HR human resource further. I were told that when you buy back your active duty years from in the reserves, it will take away from it'll add to your FERS annuity, but it'll take away from your military reserve retirement pay. Nothing can be further than the truth. So let's get that cleared up. And suppose you don't have any, you're not a military retiree either for active duty or reserve duty. You have a certain number of years, like 3 years. In our example, we were using someone who was hired to federal service on February 24th, 2006, had 3 years of active duty time. They come into federal service, and hopefully when they were hired, and you'll see why I said hopefully when they were hired, they were told about the fact that on their record it says they're veterans, they have 3 years of active duty service. So their HR, the human resource officer, should have said to them, are you interested in making a deposit for your military time? I don't know, what do you mean by a deposit? Well, it works like this. If you are interested, OPM will find out what your total base pay was when you were on active duty, and then you'll owe a deposit of 3% of that amount, and you'll buy, and that of those 3 years of active duty time will add to your civilian time for both eligibility and for computation of your FERS retirement. All right, so let's see what happens here. Okay, let's suppose that employee, when they were on active duty, 3 years, their total base pay, note here, that is 3% of their military earnings. Their military earnings consist of their total base pay. Things like housing allowances, travel allowances not included. It's just their total base pay. So this employee had a total military base pay of $30,000. So what do they owe for the deposit? 3% of $30,000. That's $900. Stop right there. Let's hold off on interest here. Let's look at the year 2006. They came into federal service on February 24, 2006. They found out if they want to make a military deposit, it's going to cost them $900. So between February 24th, 2006 and February 24th, 2009, that's exactly a 3-year period, they would have to give OPM pay a total of $900. $300 a year. You could do it in installments. That's less than $1 a day for 3 years. And they would not owe 1 penny of interest. Nothing. Just the $900. And you're going to see here in a moment what it's going to buy them. It's a bargain. Trust me. All right? But It's been my experience over the years, and I've been in this business now, almost 27 years. Veterans are not told about this deposit. They're not, when they're first hired. My experience in too many cases has been that veterans find out about this deposit from a friend who made their deposit. Our same person here who was hired in 2006, 15 years later, in 2021, is having lunch with a friend. And the friend says to him, you know what I just did? So he says, what? Oh, I finished making my deposit. So our person we're talking about here says, you did what? What do you mean deposit? Oh, didn't they tell you when you were hired about this deposit? It's a great deal. No one tells me anything. Well, you still can do it. Go to HR and tell them that you will make a deposit. Well, they still can make that deposit, but now they're going to owe interest. And the interest meter starts as of their 2-year anniversary date when they're hired. That's February 24th, 2008. Now they're going to owe interest. How much interest? Well, for the year 2008, you see the interest rate is 4.875%. So they owed $900 until that point. Now, for the year 2008, we're going to tack on another 4.875% of interest. So take $900 and add 4.875%. Now we're up to $943.88 for the year 2009. Now we're going to add another 3.875%. So that's 1.0387. 1.0387%. Now we're up to $980.40. We're paying interest and interest. So now, by 2021, what do they owe? We're up to $3,100. What is their total deposit now? The original $900 plus $3,100 of interest makes a total deposit they owe $4,000. And this person is livid. They are livid that they have to pay $3,100 of interest in addition to $900. So this is where having a discussion with someone who knows what they're talking about in terms of if it's really worth it. And like someone like those who serve. I've had these discussions with clients, many times, and they're boiling mad. They're just so livid. I got to pay the government $3,100 of interest, and it's just not worth it. I said, well, calm down. I know you're mad, and you got every right to be mad. My feeling is, don't get mad, get even. What do you mean, get even? What does that business mean? All right, let's analyze this situation, okay? In this case here, the employee intends to retire at age 62. They'll have 30 years of service. Including the 3 years of bought back military service. Without the 3 years, they'd have 20. They could retire at age 62 with 27 years of service. But with the extra 3 years, they'll have 30 years of service. And let's suppose this employee, by the time you're 62, their high through average salary is $150,000. The way I analyzed it for the person is, if you make that full deposit of $4,000, it's going to add how much to your annuity? Well, since you are retiring 62 and you have over 20 years of service, for every year of service you have, you get 1.1% of your high through average salary. So what is it? So 3 years times 3.3% times 1.1% is 3.3%. So how much will that full deposit add to your annuity? Well, take 3.3% of your high through average salary, that's $4,950. What this is saying is, you pay the government $4,000 and starting the first year of retirement for the rest of your life, if you're giving a survivor annuity, it's going to apply to the survivor annuity too. You and your spouse is going to get an extra $4,950 a year with COLAs for the rest of your life. Now, is that a good deal? Think about this. What it's saying is by paying $4,000, you're going to get a guaranteed return of $4,950 a year. I want you to think about this. Where can you invest $4,000 and get a guaranteed return of $4,950 a year? If anybody can let me know about that, but it has to be safe. It has to be, you're not going to go in crypto or something like that. I'm talking about something that is guaranteed and safe. If somebody can find such a place, I promise you I'll quit my job tomorrow. I won't be doing this anymore. You can't. Or in other words, by paying $4,000, you get your money back. You get your money back in 9.7 months. You only have to be retired 9.7 months. You get all your money back. It's a deal. So please, for those of you who have not made their deposits, you have military service, please do the following. Download the form RI 20-97. It can be downloaded from opm.gov/forms. And then fill out that form as much as you can. And then you also have to attach to that form your DD-214. That's your certificate of release of discharge from active duty, and any available records of pay or commissions, and send to the appropriate military finance. Now, you don't do that. You give the RI 20-97 and your DD-214 to your personnel office, and they will send it off to OPM, and OPM will be in contact with you, what you got to do for your deposit. And you have to complete that deposit by the time you retire. So please, it is well worth it. It's very upsetting. A couple of things are upsetting here. Number one, that HR, Human Resources, are not telling the veterans about making this deposit right away. It's this way to avoid the interest charges. But also, under the old system that I was, you got automatic credit for military service. You didn't have to make a deposit. You didn't. That's because you didn't have to make that deposit. And you got automatic credit. Not the case with the new system. Why they changed the rules, I don't know. But I have some feelings, but I'm not going to get into it. All right. So that's for military service. Now let's talk about temporary service. The rule is, if you had some temporary time, can you make a deposit for that and get credit for eligibility and for computation? The answer is yes, if the temporary service occurred before January 1st, 1989. January 1st, 1989. If you have any temporary service that occurred after December 31st, 1988, you cannot make a deposit for that temporary time. There's two exceptions. One is if you were in the Peace Corps, at any time, you can make a deposit for that and get credit for eligibility and computation orders. Or if you were in voluntaries in service to America Vista, you can make a deposit and get credit. You always get credit for leave purposes if you have temporary time, okay, for temporary time. If you are eligible to make a deposit for your temporary time, how do you do it? You have to download a form from OPM's website. Here it is. It's standard form SF 3108. And that form is application to make a deposit and a redeposit or a redeposit. Now, I want to emphasize the fact that making a deposit for temporary time under FERS can only help you. How so? It'll add to your years of service, maybe making you more eligible to retire, earlier than expected. And two, it'll increase the amount of your annuity. Not making that deposit for your temporary time will not hurt you. There's a difference here. So keep that fact in mind. How much is a deposit for temporary term cost? It's 1.3% of the amount of your temporary earnings plus interest charges. Because if you're beyond the 3-year period, beyond 2 years since you were hired, you owe interest. It's less than the military deposit. Is it worth it? Look, every little bit helps. It helps. All right. And the other type, this is not a deposit, it's called a redeposit. You should be aware of. If you happen to be in federal service, you were hired initially at some time, after December 31st, 1983. You worked a certain number of years and you left federal service. Then you took out your contributions. What contributions? The 1.3%. You worked, let's say, 3 or 4 years, maybe in the early 2000s. You worked 4 years. You took out your money when you left. Why did you take out the money? Because you're not going to be retiring federal service. Now, understand the contributions you're putting in every 2 weeks. The 1.3% or 3.3% that's coming out of your paycheck, or 4.4 or 4.9% is coming from your salary. The contributions are coming out after taxes were taken out. It's your money. Will you eventually get that money back? Yeah, when you retire from federal service as part of your monthly annuity. But you're not going to retire from federal. That's why you left. But then you changed your mind. And you came back to federal service. So it used to be when you came back, this was before October 28, 2009, you couldn't redeposit that money with interest. And so doing, you lost those years for computation purposes. Now you can. You took out the money, come back. For eligibility purposes, you don't lose the years that you took out through the contributions. For eligibility purposes, you're not starting all over again, but for computation purposes, you are. But so if you make a redeposit, you'll get those years included in the computation annuity. It can be a lot of money because you're going to charge interest too. My feeling is, when you leave if you're going to leave federal service, leave your contributions in the system, because you never know, you may come back. As we'll find out later on, you could, if you have a minimum of 5 years, you could get what's called a deferred annuity. All right. So now let's move on and talk about finally, when as a special provision employee, when can you retire? All right. So I have a chart here on the screen. It's entitled FERS Minimum Age and Service Requirements. Okay. And depending on your position, will determine what is the minimum age, minimum years of service, and the special requirements, and also the mandatory requirements. So let's go all the way in the left-hand side and see what it has here for law enforcement officer, firefighter, or Customs, Border, and Protection officers. You can retire at age 50 if you have a minimum 20 years of service, any of these. You could retire at any age with 25 years of service of any of these, as a law enforcement, firefighter, Customs, Border Patrol officer. Okay. Now here's one special requirement though. Okay. You have to complete a minimum 20 years as a law enforcement officer, firefighter, or Customs and Border Patrol officer, or combination. What I'm saying is, if part of those 20 years, any part of those 20 years is not a law enforcement officer, firefighter, Customs, Border Patrol officer, then you cannot retire. Then you cannot retire as one of those. You're just going to retire. You're going to have the regular retirement. So you could have, let's say, 15 years as a law enforcement officer, and let's say 5 years as a Customs Border Patrol. That's your 20 years, or 15 years as a firefighter, 5 years as a law enforcement officer. It's also it's in those type of those positions, minimum 20 years. When you reach age 57, there's mandatory requirement. There's mandatory retirement. Okay, and you have to have a minimum 20 years of such service. Okay. Air traffic controller, almost the same. 20 years, minimum 20 years when retired at age 50, any age with 25 years such service, but you got to complete a minimum 20 years as an air traffic controller. Mandatory retirement as an air traffic controller is age 56 with 20 years of service. All right. Now, I want to compare this to non-special provision employees. What is the minimum age and service requirement? Okay. All the way on the left side, we have the retirement option, something called immediate retirement. Immediate retirement means that as a non-special provision employee, you have met minimum age, minimum years of service. Under a regular retirement, minimum age, there are three possibilities of a combination of minimum age and service time that allow you to retire immediately. And let me define again what immediate retirement is. Immediate retirement is You retire on a certain day of a month, and you have that minimum, you reach that minimum age, and you had that minimum years of service. Let's say as of February 27th, 2026, you have met minimum age, minimum years of service. Then you retire as of February 27th, 2026, and you will get the first of lifetime annuity checks on April the 1st, 2026, because your retirement then becomes effective always on the first day of the next month. You retire February 27th, so the effective date of your retirement will be March the 1st, and you get your first of lifetime annuity checks starting April the 1st, 2026. So here's the combination: minimum age, minimum service time under regular retirement, MRA, and at 30 years, age 60, with 20 years of service, age 62, and 5 years of service. There's another type of retirement that's on the immediate. It's called reduced. If you're not a special provision employee and you've reached your MRA, minimum retirement. What is MRA? MRA is any age between 55 to 57, depending on what year you're born. If you were born between 1953 and 1964, MRA is 56. If you're born in 1965, MRA is 56 years and 2 months. If born in 1966, 56 years and 4 months. Born in 1967, 56 years and 6 months. In 1968, 56 years and 8 months. And born in 1969, 56 years and 10 months. Anytime after 1969, born anytime after, your MRA is 57. So you've reached your MRA, but you do not have 30 years of service. You have between 10 and 29 years of service. You have something in between that. You could retire, but your annuity will be reduced. We're not going to talk about, and there's also early retirement, which you could retire at any age with 20 years of service, any age with 25 years of service, or age 50, 20 years of service. And we're not going to be talking about this retirement, but I want to turn your attention here to what's called deferred retirement. If you leave federal service under any type of retirement, special provisions employees, non-special provision employees, and you leave federal service and you have a minimum of 5 years of service, then you could, and when you leave federal service, you do not withdraw your contributions. You're eligible for what's called a deferred retirement. Deferred retirement, meaning that you get your annuity later. We don't have time to talk about that today. That's a topic we do talk about during the regular FERS monthly webinar that's live every month. So if you're interested in that, maybe if you have time, attend that, the live seminar, and talk about deferred retirement, as well as the postponed retirement. All right. Here's the MRA chart. Here I just want to mention, this is find your favorite year of birth. It'll tell you what your MRA is. All right. So that is the eligibility requirements on special provision. So let's review that again. As a special provision employee, you could retire at any age with 25 years of service. A minimum, though, has to be in your particular job classification. He said, whether if it's an air traffic controller, or a law enforcement officer, firefighter, air traffic controller, minimum 20 years in those occupations, or combination of. If you do 25 years at any age, 20 years, if you have between 20 and 25, you could retire at age 60, at age 50, between 50 and 50. All right, so how much of an annuity we got? When you retire from federal service on immediate retirement, you get what's called, it's immediate retirement, and you start receiving your annuity 1 to 2 months after retire. So how much of an annuity, how much of a starting FERS gross annuity will you receive? We need to know 2 factors in order to calculate. This is how OPM calculates your annuity. 2 factors need to be known. 1 is length of service in years and months. 2, what is your high for your average salary? Those are the 2 factors. And then we make any necessary adjustments, such as the reduction to give a survivor annuity benefit to one person, such as a spouse. Understand that there's going to be subtractions from your annuity in terms of taxes, federal taxes, perhaps state taxes, if you live in a state that taxes annuities. No Social Security taxes, no Medicare taxes are taken out of your annuity check. You have health insurance premiums that are going to be deducted if you keep your federal employee health insurance, but a significant, not significant, but there's going to be a deduction from your annuity that if you choose to give a survivor annuity to one person, then you have to pay for it in terms of reduction in annuity. Now, let's go through all the steps. Let's go through the steps to calculate the annuity for a special provision employee. Step 1, determine your length of service, including all unused sick leave hours as of the retirement date. When you retire from federal service, all unused annual leave you have will be paid to you in a lump sum payment. You get paid for all unused annual leave in a lump sum payment. When it comes to unused sick leave, when you retire from federal service, any unused sick leave you have will be converted to months and days of service and added to your existing service time for computation purposes. Neither unused annual leave nor unused sick leave can be used for eligibility to retire purposes. Unused annual leave, like I said, will be paid to you in a lump sum payment. Unused sick leave, on the other hand, is converted to months and days of service and added to your existing service time for computation purposes. Step 2, determine high 3 average salary. Step 3, multiply step 1 times step 2 times what's called an accrual factor. What is that accrual factor? It could be 1%, it could be 1.1%, or it could be 1.7%, depending on how many years of service you have. Also, whether you are a special provision employee or a non-special provision employee. Okay? And step 4, make an adjustment to step 3 for the option of giving a FERS survivor annuity to one individual who has an insurable interest in a retired employee. And that's usually going to be a spouse. Talking about a spouse, for those of you who are married and your spouse is on your federal employee health insurance, when you retire from federal service, you're eligible to keep your federal employee health insurance throughout retirement, in which the government continues to pay no matter what health insurance plan you're in, no matter what type of coverage you have, self plus one, self and family. The government pays on average, right now with your employees, 72 to 75% of your premiums. You pay the other 25 to 28%. That's true when you are a retiree. When you are retired with the government, the government continues to pay 72 to 75% of the premiums, no matter what health insurance plan you're in, no matter what type of coverage you have. Self only, self plus one being one eligible family member, like a spouse, or self and family. You and multiple family members, a spouse and multiple number of children, any number of children. Now, by the time you get into retirement, it's probably just you and the spouse. I mean, the children are going to be over age 26. When they hit 26, they're no longer eligible to stay on the health insurance. So in order for your spouse to keep the federal employee health insurance in the event you predecease your spouse from retirement, you must give your spouse a survivor annuity. Doesn't have to be the maximum. You got two choices: give them the maximum 50% survivor annuity benefit or the 25%, but they got to get something. Because if you decide not to give your spouse a survivor annuity with your spouse's written consent, they consent. You don't have to give them a survivor annuity. Then as long as you're living, they can stay on your federal employee health insurance while you're a retiree. But if you pass away, you predecease your spouse is going to lose the health insurance because they're not getting a survivor annuity. Keep that fact in mind. Here it is. Upon the death of a first annuitant, how much of a survivor annuity? A surviving spouse would receive either, you got two choices here. You can choose to give your spouse a 50% maximum survivor benefit or a 25% less than maximum of the deceased FERS annuity for the remainder of the surviving spouse's life. What's going to be the cost to you, the annuitant, to give the maximum survivor benefit? 10% of your starting FERS annuity. So if your starting FERS annuity, let's say, is $40,000, and you want to give your spouse the maximum survivor benefit, what's 10% of 40,000? 4,000. 40,000 less 4,000 nets you $36,000. If you want to give your spouse the other choice of less than maximum, first of all, the spouse has to consent in writing about that. They have to consent. They're not getting in writing that they do not want, they're agreeing to not receive the maximum, they're going to get less than that. They get 25%. So if they agree to the less than maximum, 5% reduction. So if the starting annuity is 40,000, 5% of you are the annuitant, you're getting $40,000 before taking off the cost for the survivor annuity. So 5% of 40,000 is $2,000. So that you're going to receive not 40,000, but 40,000 less 2,000 nets you 38,000. Okay. Please read this. What it says here. A FERS survivor annuity risks involved. There's risk involved with a permanent reduction to a FERS retiree's own retirement income. What that means is that the FERS retiree, you are the FERS retiree, you are what's called the annuitant. You are taking a decrease in your own annuity, okay, in order to give this benefit. But there's also the potential for no payout if the FERS survivor annuitant dies first. What does that mean? It means that if you're giving your spouse this survivor benefit, you're taking a reduction in your annuity. Let's say you're retired 10 years. You've been retired 10 years. The reduction to your annuity. My example, the annuitant's taking a 10%, decides to take the maximum, wants to give their spouse a maximum survivor benefit. So they're taking that 10% cut. Their starting annuity is $40,000. So 10% of $40,000 is $4,000. So every year, the annuitant is losing $4,000 a year to give their spouse a survivor benefit of what we said, 50% of whatever the annuitant was reading at the time of the annuitant's death. Well, so 10 years goes by, $40,000 has been taken out for 10 years, $4,000 a year, and then all of a sudden, who dies first? The spouse. What happens to the $40,000? Gone. There's no refund of that money. Okay? So they say that's a risk. Well, what is the purpose of insurance? Is there a risk in insurance? Why do if you take something like life insurance, suppose you outlive the policy. You outlive that there's a risk there. So all those premiums you paid are gone unless you get this return of premium stuff, which your higher premiums are going to be higher. Get your money back, but there's a risk there too. Okay? The insurance companies, I will tell you, have no hesitation to tell you that they have something that's better than this survivor annuity. It's called getting a lifetime income from a life insurance policy. In other words, with the money you're saving, it's called pension maximization. With the money you're saving by electing not to give a survivor annuity to your spouse, with your spouse's written consent, buy yourself a life insurance policy. Take out a life insurance policy on yourself, and then your spouse will get the proceeds. Upon your death, and use that money for a lifetime payout. The life insurance. That's risky too. There's risky too. Please. You do yourself and your spouse a big favor by electing to give a survivor annuity. I have never heard somebody said to me it was a waste of money. Never. Okay. A no FERS survivor annuity option is available in which a surviving spouse, here it is, would not receive any survivor annuity. This is called a life-only annuity in which there would be no reduction to the retiree's FERS annuity, thereby resulting in a maximum monthly FERS annuity. The FERS annuity would cease at the death of the FERS retiree. In order for the life-only annuity to occur, the spouse would have to consent to this arrangement in writing. Also, if the surviving spouse is not a federal employee and is enrolled in the FERS retiree's FEHB program, health insurance, then when the FERS retiree dies, the survivor spouse would no longer be eligible to remain in the FEHB insurance program. And to me, that is a big risk. Unfortunately, these insurance people, and I have an insurance license, so I know where they're coming from. I know where they're coming from. They're out to sell you something, particularly when it comes to selling the permanent insurance, the cash value insurance. They're not going to bring up this issue, what the risk is in terms of losing the insurance, because they want to sell you something. So take it from me, who has given his wife a full maximum survivor annuity, it's worth peace of mind. All right. So let's go through the particulars here. What is included in your length of service? Remember I was talking about the SCD for retirement. What is that day? That's the starting point for determining your length of service. And that includes both full-time and part-time service. It includes temporary time for which a full deposit was made. If you made, we're talking about deposits for military service and for temporary time. If you made a full deposit, you get credit for terms of the years that you worked as a temporary employee. The same thing for active duty military time. And finally, I talked about unused sick leave. But again, I emphasize the fact that unused sick leave can only be used when it's converted to months and days for computation purposes. You cannot use unused sick leave to make you eligible to retire. Here's a chart that shows, this comes out of the OPM manual. It's called the sick leave chart, 2,000 hours. It's a chart used to convert hours of unused sick leave to months and days of service. On the day that you retire, you go to this chart, and the numbers here represent the number of hours on unused sick leave. And to find out what that converts to months and days of service, you look up to get your months. Here's like, if I'm looking at, say I have 1,449 hours of unused sick leave. I look up, that's 8 months. Go to the left here. To get your days, that's 8 months and 10 days. 8 months and 10 days. Here is the actual chart that is used to calculate your length of service. Obviously, there's software galore out there that will do this for you. But I think it's important that we're going to do an example here to see how your length of service is determined. But let me just show you what's on the chart here. And this chart. We have for our columns, year, month, day. We have our rows. What is your retirement date? We subtract. When I say subtract here, we're going to do some, in our example, we're going to do some subtraction. We're going to subtract days from days, months from months, from years. And that will equal our total credible service. And given our age, are we eligible to retire? And then we add 100% of unused sick leave, after you have the chart. And that will finally give us our last row here for our service time used for annuity computation. So without further ado, let's do an example. So I had somebody who retired on December 31st, 2024. The retirement SCD was December the 9th, 1992. They had 1,450 hours of unused sick leave. So before we do anything, let's go back here to our chart to see what 1,450 hours of unused sick leave is. So I see 1,449, then I see 1,455. So where's 1,450? It's in between here. So here's the question. If your unused sick leave, when it's converted to months and days of service, is in between the numbers here, what do you do? Round up or round down? I'm happy to report you round up, so I got to go to 1,455. So that's 8 months and 11 days. Go back here to the chart. Here's your 8 months. Here's your 8 months and 11 days. All right. So let's, before we begin, I got to give you some things you need to know about how this length of service is calculated. First thing you need to know is that the OPM calendar is as follows. Every month of the year has 30 days in it. No matter what month you're in, the month has 30 days in it. And this particular month, as we're recording, is February. So your calendar, my calendar says February has 28 days. The OPM calendar says OPM's calendar says February has 30 days. Last month was January, 31 days in January. Your calendar said 31 days. My calendar says, OPM's calendar says 30 days. Next month is March. Your calendar says March has 31 days. My calendar says March has 31 days. OPM calendar says 30 days. That's number one. Number two, you can retire on any day you want. Given that you're eligible to retire, you can retire on any day of the month you want, no matter what day of the month you are. Okay? You can retire on any day you want. All right. So let's get started here. All right. You always start at the day comes. So what's 9 from 31? 22. What's 12 from 12? 0. What's 1992 from 2000 to 32? Okay? All right. So here's our 8 months, 11 days. Now we're going to add. So what's 22 plus 11? 22 plus 11. 33. How many? That's 33 days. How many days in a month according to OPM? 30 days. So you notice I put 3 here, but then just like you did in addition when you're in grade school, you added from the units column to the tens column. You carried over to the tens column. I'm carrying over to the months column. So I'm putting a +1 up here. So 1 plus 1 plus 8 plus bring down is 0 plus 1 plus 8 is 9. Carry down to 32. So this person's service time for FERS and new computation purposes is 32 years and 9 months. The 3 days are lost. OPM will only calculate your annuity based on years and months of service. All right. High through average salary. Generally defined, the high through average salary is the average of the 3 consecutive years of salary. Which 3 years? Most employees, and I'm sure you would agree with this, earn their highest salaries when at the end of their careers, not at the beginning, not at the end, but at the end. Okay. What salary are we talking about here? When you are a specialist employee, we're talking about your regular pay. We're talking about locality pay. If you work in an area of the country in which you get locality adjustments, it does include premium pay. It includes standby pay. If you're in law enforcement and you have to be on standby because of a particular thing you're doing there, you get extra pay for that. That is included in your high through average salary. What's not included in your high through average salary are bonuses, overtime, cash awards are not included. Everything that you see on the screen here is based on your SF50 salary. You can't look at your W-2 salary, that you get a W-2 every January. It shows your salary because on your W-2, it'll include things that don't show up on your SF50 salary, including cash awards. So you got to use your SF50 salary. All right, I'm not going to go through all the gory details how it's done. Obviously, there's software that does this, but this is the chart that's used their high through average salary. Okay, what I want to get to here, and I think we'll go back here, is to go through the calculation of, we have everything in place now to calculate your FERS annuity. So here's what it comes down to. There's a formula to calculate your starting FERS annuity, and it's up here on the screen. We take 1.7%, that's called the accrual factor, times your high through average salary, times your first 20 years of service. Remember I was talking about you had that 20 years, you have that 20 years, you have to have a minimum 20 years in your particular job classification. Law enforcement officer, air traffic controller, firefighter, customer worker, makes no difference. You have to have at least 20 years in that occupation or a combination of, okay? Then we add to that 1% times your high through average salary, times your remaining years of service, which includes unused sick leave, temporary time, and for which a full deposit was made, or any additional years of service beyond the 20 years. All right. So let's do an example. Here. Jeremy is a law enforcement officer. He's age 50, 23 years of FERS LEO service, and is eligible to retire. Jeremy made a full deposit for 3 years of active duty military service. Jeremy decides to retire with a high 3-average salary of $100,000. Jeremy also has 6 months of unused sick leave. Jeremy's starting FERS annuity is equal to, let's do it slowly. We're going to take 20 years. Here's his 20 years times 1.7%. Plus, he's got 6.5 years. Where's the 6.5 years? He made a deposit for 3 years of active military service. Okay. It has 3 years. He has 3 years beyond 20 years, or he has 23 years of service. So he has 20 years plus 3 years of Leo service. So it's 3 years added to the 3 years of bought back military time, plus 6 months of unused sick leave. So that's 6.5 years times the 1.0% accrual factor. So that's added up. It's 0.34 plus 0.065 times 100,000, which is equals 0.405 times 100,000, which is 40,500. Okay, that is Jeremy's starting FERS annuity. 40,500. Now he retires in whatever month. Let's say he retired on February 27th. Let's say he's retiring in a few days, February 27th. Then he's going to get $40,500. And then next year, if there's a COLA, like there was a COLA of 2.2% this past January, maybe another 2 or 3% next January, he'll get a COLA. That is not true with non-special provision employees. When you are a non-special provision employee, if you retire before age 62, you do not get a COLA until you reach 62. FERS Special provision employees get their first COLA the year after they retire, like CSRS employees. All right.
Okay, folks, here are some more examples of the questions that we've encountered in our part twos and that we're more than happy to take care of within them. So take a quick look at that. And again, these specific questions about your personal situation is exactly what part two is designed to address. So go ahead and scan the QR code or email us at part2@swserve.com anytime, and we'll help out any way we can. Before Ed gets into the final segment, I want to share something with you, but I want to begin by saying thank you. We know that many of you found this training because of a friend or colleague telling you about us. And that is really important. We are so grateful. Why? Well, number one, it allows us to provide these trainings at no cost. It allows federal employees to access them whenever they need to. They can access them whenever. So by sharing the training with others, you're helping us get the word out, and you're helping your friends get a better understanding of their benefits. The big thing we know, Ed's mentioned it, we've been at this close to 40 years. We know that HR and retirement specialists are stretched really, really, really thin, especially right now, and simply can't provide this type of comprehensive education for every employee. So I'm asking for your help. I'd like you to think right now of a person who should watch this training, and then I want you to let them know. And it's really easy for you to do it. Just forward the link that you used from our YouTube video or our website, send it directly to them, or send them to swserve.com, and they can access our full menu and pick whatever they want. We're just asking each person who's watching this to reach one person. So thank you for helping us spread the word about this valuable resource for federal employees. And remember, each one, reach one. Ed, back to you.
Thanks very much, Dan. Great information. We appreciate, ladies and gentlemen, you're spreading the word. We're trying to get to as many employees as possible. We're here to help answer your questions, your friends, your fellow employees, fellow retirees' questions. We're here to serve. That's what we're called, serving those to serve. So please, we thank you in advance for doing it, trying to make it as easy as possible. And we thank you, Dan, for that information. Okay. So we left off talking about, we just talked about the calculation of the FERS annuity. Now, what else does a retiring special provisionally get when they retire from federal service? Something called the Special Retirement Supplement Annuity, the SRS annuity. Now, what is it? Now, what is the SRS annuity? Why do FERS employees get this? So let's go back to the beginning today, which I was talking about the three components of the FERS retirement. The three components of the FERS retirement. We said that the three components of the FERS retirement are the FERS annuity, TSP, and Social Security. We just been through the FERS annuity. You retire from federal service, immediate retirement, you get the first of lifetime annuity checks 1 to 2 months after you retire. We're not talking about TSP today, but I will tell you, as far as TSP is concerned, special provision employees can actually access their traditional TSP with no penalty if they retire under the rules, 25 years of age, 25 years of service and retired at any age. If you have a special provision employee with 20 to 25 years of service, can retire anytime after age 3, can also access their traditional TSP with no early withdrawal penalty. But the third component, Social Security, the earliest age you can access, you can start drawing your Social Security is age 62. Age 60, that's the earliest age. You're encouraged to wait, though, because if you take your Social Security at age 62, it's going to be reduced. When can you start accessing your Social Security with no reduction? Full retirement age, which for most people now is 67. All right, we're not talking about Social Security. So because of that, because many FERS employees do in fact retire before 62, OPM has added something called the Special Retirement Supplement Annuity. This is in addition to your FERS annuity. Okay, FERS annuity. How is it computed? How OPM does this? Retiring FERS employee doesn't have to do anything. A retiring FERS employee will get this supplement annuity, the special retirement supplement annuity, whether they like it or not. They can turn it down though, and for reasons I'll get into it here in a moment why they would say I don't want it. All right. So to give you an idea how this is done, when a FERS employee retires from federal service before age 62, your retirement application is sent to OPM, and OPM is going to contact the Social Security Administration to find out what that retiring FERS employee's Social Security benefit is at age 62. Because you can find that out yourself. You go on, you have your own Social Security account. You can find out what your Social Security benefit is going to be at 62, at 67, at age 70. In today's dollars. Well, when this employee retires, the OPM wants to find out what their Social Security benefit is at 62, and then they're going to do a calculation. They're doing the calculation. They're going to form a ratio. The numerator in this ratio is the number of years of FERS service. Divided by 40. Why 40? Because most individuals pay into Social Security for 40 years. So take the number of years of FERS service divided by 40, multiply that by the OPM multiplies that times the amount of the retired employees' Social Security benefits at 62. So for example, let's say the employee's estimated Social Security benefit at 62 is $15,000, and they have 30 years of FERS service. 30 over 40 times 15,000 is 11,250. So that is the annuity. That is the FERS annuity supplement. That's in addition to the employee's FERS annuity. Now, here's the problem. When you are a non-special provision employee, you are retired. Let's say you retired at your MRA with 30 years of service, age 57, let's say. You're going to be getting your regular FERS annuity. You're going to get this annuity supplement, like here, getting $11,250. If this person right here in this example goes out and works, they have a job, they're getting a W-2 salary, or they might be self-employed, they have a business, they have a net profit from self-employment. Every year, those wages, the annuity supplement is subject to what's called an earnings test. This year in 2026, the earnings test, this is the Social Security earnings test. Social Security also has a rule that if you take your Social Security before your full retirement age and you're working, Social Security has the right to take back some of your benefits because you're still working. Social Security retirement benefit is such a thing. Social Security, the whole idea of getting Social Security is that you are retired. And by still working, it's taking away. And Social Security will say, we're going to take part of your benefit away because you're earning too much money. So for this year, that earnings test is $24,480. And what that earnings test says is for every $2, in my example here, the FERS employee retired at age 60, at age 57, with this $11,250 FERS annuity supplement. For every $2, that employee, that FERS annuitant earns above $24,480. OPM is going to take $1 back of their benefit starting in 2027. Next year, they'll take back the benefit. They'll reduce their benefit. Doesn't look that cool. Why is OPM doing it? Because they don't want you to work and receive this annuity, work more than full time to get this FERS or something. And if you earn less than $24,480, okay, fine. But if you go above that, for every $2 above that, they're going to take back $1 of your benefit. How does that apply to special provision employees? All right. How does that apply? If you retire from federal as a special provision employee before your MRA, somebody retired as a law enforcement officer at the age of 48 or 25 years of service. I know somebody recently, 25 years of service. They got their FERS annuity and they got their special retirement supplement annuity, and they're still work. They got another job in private. There's no lack of opportunity to be in law enforcement in this country. He got himself a job as law enforcement. He is under his MRA. His MRA is 57. For the next 9 years, he can earn as much as he wants, and his special retirement supplement annuity is not going to be affected. But once he reaches his MRA, at that point, his special retirement supplement will be subject to the earnings test, whatever it is that year. But for the next 9 years, he can earn as much as his one. Okay. A summary here. The special retirement supplement annuity is paid in addition to the FERS annuity when a special provision employee retires from federal service. It's paid no matter what age a special provision employee retires. For example, a special provision employee retires at age 50 with at least 20 years of federal service as a LEO, firefighter, air traffic controller, or a Customs Border Patrol officer, or at any age with at least 25 years of service as a LEO, firefighter, air traffic controller, or Customs Border Patrol officer. There's no earnings test. It's the same earnings test that's used for Social Security when you're under your full retirement age. There's no earnings test until the retired employee reaches his or her MRA. The moment they reach MRA, that's when they're subject to that earnings test. Unlike a special provision FERS annuity, there is no COLA applied to the FERS annuity supplement. Okay? When you retire from FERS as a special provision employee, yes, you do get a COLA. You don't have to wait until you're 62 like regular FERS employees have, who retire before 62. They have to wait till 62 to get their first COLA. Not the case with special provisions, the special provision employees. But there is no COLA on the special retirement annuity, on the FERS annuity supplement. Okay, and it'll end on, the special provision annuitant. The special provision annuity ends when any annuitant reaches the age 62. It stops automatically. At that point, the special provision retiree annuitant has to decide whether they want to take Social Security or not. If they're still working, I would not take it. Okay. All right. Some other things you need to know about retiring as a special employee. Okay. Let's go through some terms here. Effective date. No matter which day of the month a FERS employee retires, his or her retirement always becomes effective on the first day of the following month. And then their first new check receipt date will be the first day of the month following their effective date. Example, we use the example. And a FERS employee retired on December 31st, 2025. What is the effective date of their retirement? January 1st, 2026. When did they get their first annuity check? February 1st, 2026. The reason I'm bringing this up, ladies and gentlemen, is suppose this employee was actually eligible to retire on December the 3rd, 2025. Actually, they decided, I'm eligible to retire. The holidays are coming up. I want to be with family. My family's out of town. The heck with it. I'm just going to retire on December 3rd. If they retired on December 3rd, 2025, when would their retirement become effective? January 1st, 2026. When would they get their first annuity check? February 1st, 2026. Now, keep in mind, when you retire from federal service, there's no more paychecks coming in. No more paychecks. And now, this person retired on December 3rd, 2025, they have to wait nearly 2 months to get that first annuity check? That doesn't make sense. So you should make every effort to try to retire as close to ideally on the last day of the month. And you can retire on no matter what day that is. It could be a Saturday, a Sunday. It could be a holiday. No matter what day of the month, if the last day of the month is a holiday, makes no difference. It could be a weather day, a snow day. It could be a furlough day. You could retire on that ideally on the last day of the month. A FERS employee should make every effort to retire on a day as close to the end of the month as possible, ideally the last of the month, in order to receive one's first annuity check as soon as possible. A FERS employee should attempt to retire at the end of a pay period if possible. For most employees, this is the second Saturday of the pay period, in order to accrue the full amount of annual and sick leave hours for the pay period. A FERS employee who wants to maximize his or her annual leave should retire at the end of December, also good for tax reasons. I'm saying that because remember I talked about what happens to your unused annual leave when you retire? That unused annual leave is it's paid in a lump sum is fully taxable. It shows up on a W-2 It shows up on a W-2. You got paid for all unused annual leave. And that unused leave will be paid a lump sum by your payroll processing office. So if you retire in, let's say, late December, before the start of the new year, you could get paid for as much as 456 hours of unused annual leave. Usually 448, but some years there are 27 pay periods. So that would be carry over 240 hours from the previous leave year. You're not using any annual leave in the current year. You're accruing 8 hours every 2 weeks. So 8 times 26 is 26 pay periods, 8 hour period. 8 times 26 is 208. 208 added to 240 is 448 hours. That is all taxable. You're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's going to be paid out, added to your existing income. So if you get retired in December, be paid out in January, you're into a new tax year. And it may be that if you're fully retired, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. You could save some money on taxes by having it paid out in this new year that you're going to be fully retired. It's something you need to plan for. Now, if you're going to get another job, special employee, and you're going to be, probably, now that you have more income coming in, it may push you into a higher tax bracket. It's something you should talk to an accountant. Retiring is a good time to to talk to a tax professional who can help you with some of the tax issues. It's a different stage in your life. I cannot tell you the number of people I run into who say, all these years I've been able to do my taxes, but now I'm retired, I'm totally flustered. I need help. And that's when you have to go to someone who has experience in terms of helping retirees in particular. Cost of living adjustments. What you see on the screen is for regular employees. A FERS employee who retires before age 62 gets no COLA. Not the case with special risk employees. No matter when you retire, you will get your first COLA the year after you retire. Now, what is this COLA? It's the CPI to CPI-W, the Consumer Price Index for urban workers, and CSRS retirees get one, and then Social Security get that one. But for FERS employee, there's always an adjustment. It seems like there's always an adjustment. And that adjustment is as follows. If it turns out CPI-W is more than 3.3%, then the FERS COLA will be reduced by 1. A couple of years ago, the CPI-W was like 4.5%. The FERS COLA, therefore, was 3.5%. It's a CPI. W is between 2 and 3%. The first COLA is chopped down to 2%. So last year, the CPI-W was 2.3%. The first COLA went down to 2%. It's a CPI-W lesson that everybody gets the same COLA. And there were some years that the CPI was zero. Okay? FERS, here it's all summarized here. FERS annuitants who do not retire as special provision employees do not receive their first COLA until the January 1st following the year they become age 62. FERS annuitants who retire as special provision employees receive their first COLA the January 1st after they retire. Note, you could retire, remember, at any age. My client, the person I talked to, into the taxes, retired last year at age 48, 25 years of service. Will be getting their first COLA this coming year. COLAs are applied to special employee annuitants no matter where the special provision annuitant retires. It's the same COLA. It's not much, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to keep up with inflation. Okay, believe me, true inflation. But it's better than nothing. Talking about that, here's your sample of what the COLAs have been through the years. Here it is for 1980 to 2026. You can see here, this past January, 2%. Last year was 2%. 2024 was 3.2%. It was reduced down to 2.2%. In 2023, we had a high inflation. The CPI that was actually 8.7%, but it's just down to 7%. Don't ask me why Congress did it this way. I have no idea, but I'm just here the messenger. Talk about a few more things here about survivor benefits real briefly. Again, I encourage you to please attend our regular, this is the live webinar, Survivor Benefits. I have the date here. The next Survivor Benefits webinar will be held on March the 25th, 2026. Please go to the website to see what is the time, and we go into a lot of detail about all the survivor benefits. This is a brief summary of what they are. And FERS survivor benefits include to give a survivor annuity benefit to one person. That person has a true interest in you. Usually it's a spouse. What happens if you die in federal service? Then your spouse is automatically entitled to a survivor annuity. Okay? Also, there could be a cause for court order or maybe a divorce settlement. You may have to give a survivor annuity to a former spouse. Can both the spouse and a former spouse receive an annuity? No. But it can be divided up. Maybe your current spouse gets half, or the former spouse gets the other half. If the former spouse, of course, is getting all of it, then your current spouse will get nothing. Okay? There's something called the FERS Basic Employee Death Benefit. This is a lump sum payment paid to a surviving spouse of a FERS employee who dies in service, not after they retire. How much is it? It can be over like $150,000. It's a death benefit. It's not life insurance. Life insurance in addition. There's also children's monthly survivor benefits if you die as in service or you die after you retire. And then there's a lump sum payment of your retirement contributions. Again, we go through this all through that spousal thing. So beneficiary forms. Please make sure you filled out these beneficiary forms. The following beneficiaries should be filled out and submitted by all FERS employees, except for the TSP beneficiary. All forms can be downloaded from opm.gov. Form TSP-3, that's the beneficiary form, can be can't do that anymore. A TSP beneficiary form has to be filled out online. Please, if you have not done so, get yourself an online account with the TSP, and you can fill out the beneficiary form online. It's very easy to do. Do it online, but please do so. Make sure your beneficiary forms are all up to date. Okay? Another beneficiary form that you be filled out is Standard Form SF-1152, Designation of Beneficiary. That's the unpaid compensation of a deceased civilian employee. This form is used to designate the beneficiary or the beneficiaries of a deceased employee. What is that for? For when the employee died in service, they had earned a partial paycheck, and then they have unused annual leave. Who's going to get the last paycheck and the unused annual leave? Remember I said when you leave federal service, when you retire from federal service, any unused annual leave you have will be paid out in a lump sum. So someone you designate, anybody can be designated as the beneficiary of your unpaid compensation unused annual leave on this form SF-1152. I don't care if you're going to retire in 5 days, 5 years, or 50 years from now. Please fill out that form SF-1152. You can download it from opm.gov and give it to your personal office. If you have the government life insurance, FEGLI, SF2823 is the beneficiary form for FEGLI. If you have private insurance, life insurance, same thing. There's TSP-3 form, and then there's one beneficiary form for FERS, standard form SF3102, designated beneficiary of your FERS contributions. This form is used to designate the beneficiary or beneficiaries of a deceased FERS employees on contributions. The money you're putting into the FERS retirement every 2 weeks, you get that money back when you are retired as part of your monthly annuity, survivor annuity. But if any money is left over has not been paid back to you and to your survivor annuitant, will go to the designated beneficiary on 3102. Okay? Your health insurance can be kept in retirement. It's retire under immediate, not a deferred annuity. If you leave federal service, I mentioned that if you leave federal service where you're eligible to retire, I think I mentioned this, you're eligible for a deferred retirement. If you have between 5 and 19 years of service and you leave, you can get your deferred retirement at age 62. If you leave with between 20 and 30 years of service, you get your deferred retirement starting at age 60. And if you have more than 30 years of service, you get your deferred retirement starting at your minimum retirement age. But here's my point. When you leave federal service, you give up your benefits, including your health insurance. It's not going to come back when you get started getting your deferred annuity. The only way it's going to come back is you have to come back to federal service and work a minimum amount of time. Okay. Also, keep in mind that you have to have been continuously enrolled in the Federal Employee Health Insurance Program for either let's say the last 5 years of federal service. Your last 5 years of federal, you must have been enrolled in the Federal Employee Health Insurance to keep it for retirement. Okay. And the cost is going to be the same. The cost, when I say the cost is you're paying on average, no matter what FEHB plan you're enrolled in, your cost is you're paying on average 25 to 28% of the premiums, and your agency, the federal government, is paying the other 70 to 75%. You can change your plan from 1 year to the next during the open season. The same thing holds true in retirement during the open season. There's a separate dental and vision insurance available to employees who are eligible to enroll in the FEHB program. There's no 5-year rule for that. If you didn't have dental and or vision insurance when you're an employee, you can have it as a retiree, provided that you have the FEHB. You pay the entire cost of the premiums. There's no government contribution like with the FEHB when it comes to dental vision, okay? You enroll in it, disenroll in it, or change plans during the annual open season, held annually, from the second Monday of November to the second Monday of December, okay? If you have the government life insurance, FEGLI, to learn more about FEGLI and other types of insurance, I suggest that we have a recording for understanding FEGLI and other life insurance. Go to the website, www.stw.org, to listen to the webcast, to the broadcast, to learn everything about, similar to this one, learning about life insurance. If you have FEGLI and you want to keep it in retirement, you can. It's going to be more expensive, but you have to retire on immediate, not a deferred annuity. Again, with deferred annuity, you lose your health benefits, life insurance benefits, dental insurance benefits. Various parts of FEGLI, including the basic and the optional coverages, are available to keep in retirement. Okay. There's a 5-year rule for keeping FEGLI too. You had to have been enrolled in the FEGLI for the 5 years leading up to the day that you retire. You also did not convert your FEGLI to an individual policy. Long-term care insurance. The federal government offers long-term care insurance to employees, annuitants, and to eligible family members. Premiums paid entirely by enrollees. No government contribution. Eligible members, current employees, and annuitants and members can enroll at any time. However, ever since December 19, 2022, the federal long-term care insurance program has been shut down for new applicants. They were supposed to reopen December 19, 2024, but they needed more time to reevaluate the program. Now it's supposed to reopen in December 2026. So at that point, when they reopen, you want to enroll, it's something to think about. I'm saying that because long-term care insurance, there are not that many companies offering it. It's expensive. You may, especially if you're in your 40s and 50s or younger, because you're more likely to be approved. You have to fill out an application. They are going to look at your health records. You could be turned down, and the younger you are, the less chance you'll have some of the health issues that could turn you down from long-term insurance. It's something to think about. We also have a recording for long-term care. Okay. All right. So Dan, I have come to the end here. So let's put a summary here and put it together.
Absolutely. Folks, working with Ed as long as I have, I know exactly what it feels like when you start drinking from that fire hose of information. So one of the biggest things we do in part 2 is help you process all of that. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to reiterate the differences between part 1 and part 2. So for example, regarding the TSP, part 1 is what are the rules? How much can you put in? How does the match work? Part 2, how might you be maximizing your TSP? What might be a good strategy for you? Regarding your pension, part 1, how does the pension work? What's the formula? What's the eligibility criteria? Part 2, what does your pension look like? What does it look like if you work a little longer or even a little shorter? Regarding Social Security, part 1, what are the rules around when you can draw? Part 2, what is the best strategy for you and your family as far as when to draw? So on our next screen, you'll be able to see one of our QR codes to go ahead and schedule your part 2 session, or again, just email us at part2@scwserve.com. We created this on-demand format because of what happened last year. You asked us for flexible, accessible training that fits your schedule. And that's what we try and do at Serving Those Who Serve. We listen to what federal employees need. We do our best to respond. So whether you're just starting to think about retiring or you're getting close to making that decision, we're here to help you understand the benefits and make informed choices. I want to say thanks to Ed for another comprehensive training session, and thanks to you for taking the time to invest in your benefits education. Check out our website, scwserve.com, for more on-demand trainings. Ed's Fed Zone columns are gold. Don't miss them. The FedLife podcasts and other valuable resources for federal employees. And remember, this training is available for you to watch again and again, anytime. So there's no time limit on it. It's not like when you rent a video through your cable provider, you only have 48 hours. Not here, folks. You can come back to it. And when you're ready for personalized guidance on your situation, we're here for you with the part 2 session. So thank you for being a part of the federal employee community we serve. Ed, I'll give you the last word.
Thanks, Dan. I want to thank everyone for attending today's broadcast. Please come back for more. Like Dan mentioned, it's all there for you to taking. And we're here. That's why we're called Serving Those Who Serve. In the meantime, if you have any questions, I just want to mention we have a dedicated mailbox that'll take your questions. You can send a question to askstws@stwserve.com. If you have any questions, when the questions come in, someone will answer the question. If they can't answer it, they'll send it to me. I'll be happy to answer your question. So please take advantage of out there. We want to help. Whether you are an employee or retiree or in between, we're here to help. That's what we're called Serving Those Who Serve. So thank you. And finally, thank you, Dan, for hosting today. I couldn't do any of this without you. So thank you so much. Wish everyone the very best. Be well, stay safe.
Take care.
Take care.